What's up, hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys the books that I read in the month of March. I completed 10 books in the month of March, which I am really pleased about. The first book I read in the month of March is one that I listened to on audio, and that is One Dark Throne, which is a sequel to Three Dark Thrones by Kendara Blake. I recently did a really awesome video in partnership with HarperCollins, inspired by the Three Dark Crowns series, which I love so much, so if you want to check it out, I will leave that in the link down below. I personally gave One Dark Throne 5 out of 5 stars. The Three Dark Crowns series has truly stolen my heart, and so much of that has to do with this amazing sequel. I mentioned in last month's wrap-up that with Three Dark Crowns, the first installment of this series, I had trouble staying engaged with the story, and I had a lot of expectations that were just not fulfilled. But One Dark Throne ended up being absolutely everything I wanted from Three Dark Crowns. Again, I really enjoyed the first book in this series, but One Dark Throne just surpassed all expectations. It was exactly what I was looking for. The characters grow such interesting dynamics in this story. There's a lot of political intrigue, and just everything is intensified tenfold since Three Dark Crowns. It was amazing. I really love this series, and if you're someone like me that enjoyed the first book but it didn't fully live up to what you were expecting, I would totally recommend continuing on with One Dark Throne, because I just already cannot wait for the third book in this series. It is so freaking good. The next book that I read in the month of March is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. I read this as a part of the Shadowhunter Chronicles read-along that I am hosting this year. We have already had our live show for City of Glass, so if you are interested in checking out that live show, I will leave it in the description below. It's no surprise that I loved City of Glass. This was my 9th time reading this book, and I feel like I say this every single time I reread the series, but this is probably one of my favorite rereads thus far. City of Glass is a huge fan favorite in the Mortal Instruments fandom, but for me, it has never been one of my top favorites of the 6-book series. For me, the beginning of City of Glass is always kind of a drag, and like, I don't mean that in a negative way, even though like that's a negative phrase, but I just don't look forward to reading this one as much as other books like City of Bones or City of Lost Souls. But as soon as I get into City of Glass, I just cannot stop reading. Even though the beginning of this book is not a favorite of mine, like, the hype around it is deserved. It is such a great installment in the story, and I really love the way that it leads up to the following books to come. It's just so fun rereading my favorite author's books, because I love being able to see how much he's grown just from City of Ashes to City of Glass. It's like really fantastic. I'm having the best time with this read along. You should totally join it if you love the Shadowhunter Chronicles like me, but I am very happy I read City of Glass this month. The next book that I read in the month of March is an ebook that I read through my local library, and that is Follow Me by Shepard, which is book 2 in the Amateur series. Like Three Dark Crowns, I started the Amateur series last month, and with book 1, I loved it. I was so addicted to it, but I accepted that it's not a very good book whatsoever. Follow Me, on the other hand, had none of that excitement and addictiveness and intoxication that I felt from the Amateurs, and it was just not a good book. I gave Follow Me 2 out of 5 stars. I really did not enjoy my time reading this sequel. I feel very disappointed and let down, because everything I loved about the Amateurs that was a redeeming quality is just totally absent from this book. The characters in the Amateurs were already not that well developed, but somehow they became even flatter in Follow Me, which I don't even know how that's possible. The diverse representation also started out not that great and is even worse in Follow Me, because one of the only 2 people of color in this story is just completely absent and makes no contributions to the story whatsoever. The mystery plot line in the Amateurs is not my favorite, but in Follow Me, the mystery is just so contrived. Their leads are totally nonsensical and just pop up out of nowhere. There's no deductive reasoning to get from point A to point B. It's just very convenient. The one improvement I identified is that the writing did not bother me as much in the sequel as it did in the first book, but even then, I still wouldn't call it good. It's tolerable. And I can't really talk about the one thing that really angered me about this story, because it's kind of spoilery, but if you are interested, my Goodreads review is down below, and you can uncheck the spoiler if you want to read it. But basically, the main victim of this story is just constantly villainized for no reason. The outcome of the plotline I'm referring to, honestly, it could have been so clever, and I would have given this book a whole nother star, because I think it had the potential to be done really well, but it was executed very badly, and it was just very Very disappointing. I loved The Amateurs purely for the enjoyable experience I had while reading it. Follow Me was a massive letdown, but I will still probably be picking up book 3 in this story just to see if there's anything left from that excitement while reading The Amateurs that I can get from book 3, but this was a very disappointing sequel. Next book I read in the month of March is another audiobook I listened to, and that is The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I gave The Hazelwood 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. That's like the best word I have to describe it. There are people who really, really love this book and people who really did not like it, and I'm just here like, it was okay. The writing is good, the characters are fine, the world is probably the most interesting part of this story, but it wasn't anything incredible or anything that I hadn't really seen before. It is a very unique story, but it just doesn't stand out to me. Nearing the end of the story, when like the climax was supposed to be happening and it was supposed to be the most exciting point of the story, I did feel a little less engaged. I think I preferred the mystery aspect in the beginning of the story, like what happened to Alice's grandmother and what is the Hazelwood, what is happening to her, as opposed to all of the fantastical elements nearing the end of the story, but that's just my personal thing. The biggest critique that I find in reviews of The Hazelwood is that people do not like the main character, even though she's supposed to be an unlikable main character, and I just didn't have these strong feelings that other people do about Alice. She is mean and rude and ill-tempered. She's so disrespectful to Finch, who is the nicest character in the world. And those are all totally valid statements on her character, but her personality is so integral to the end of the story that there was a reason for it, so it didn't bother me. It's not like it was completely out of the blue unnecessary. It had a purpose. So The Hazelwood, it was okay. I didn't overwhelmingly love my time reading it, but I also can't really say that there's much I distinctly dislike about this story. If you're someone who likes that balance between urban fantasy and magical realism, you might really enjoy it. It just wasn't my favorite book that I've ever read. The next book that I read in the month of March is 21 Ways to a Happier Depression by Seth Swersky. I talked a little bit about this in my most recent haul. I gave this book 3 stars. I picked it up on a whim at Barnes & Noble. I read the whole thing in one sitting and I found it enjoyable, but it wasn't the most amazing, profound thing I've ever read. I have to say I loved the watercolor illustrations that are all throughout this book. My thing with 21 Ways to a Happier Depression is it's nothing I haven't read before. Like, all 21 things are things that I have seen and heard before, but I will say they were a nice reminder. Like, since reading this book, I make my bed more often and I make an effort to do these things more, so I do find it kind of helpful. The issue is, in order to benefit in any way, shape, or form from this book, you have to be motivated to make differences in your life and you have to actually put in that effort to benefit from it. Otherwise, nothing in this book is going to be helpful for you. I think this book has the potential to be helpful to people like me who are in a position where they are functioning most days with their mental illness, who have the incentive and actually want to incorporate new things and have the motivation and will put in the effort to do so. But unfortunately, there are millions of people who just aren't able to do so as a result of their mental illness. Motivation is severely impacted by depression and anxiety, so nothing in this book would be helpful to those people. I mean, I guess like most self-help books, it really depends on like your relationship with your mental illness if you're gonna get anything out of it. But definitely, if you are not someone who is like willing to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to add new tasks into my day to help myself out and feel better and actually follow through with them, you're not going to benefit. But if you're someone who are, you might get something out of this story. The next book that I read in the month of March is another ebook that I got from my local library, and that is Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. I loved this book so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was amazing. It might be one of my favorites of the year. It was just so fantastic and I was so happy I read it. Whoever is a part of my like serious issue contemporary crew, like, this is the book for you. This book deals with so much sensitive subject matter, from adoption and the foster care system in teen pregnancy to teen sexuality and family and relationships, and it is just chock full of intensity and I loved it so much. The writing of this story is so beautiful. All of the characters are very unique and individual and well developed, but their relationships and the way they grow with each other all throughout the story is just so well done. This is an amazing story, but it's just so emotional. If you're someone who's looking for like a fun, lighthearted read right now, this is not the book for you, because I cried so many times throughout this story. for a wide variety of reasons. It is a book to make you bawl. I have nothing but praise for Far From the Tree. It absolutely deserves this little National Book Award winning award because wow, it is amazing. The next book that I read in the month of March is Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. This book comes out on April 10th, and I was sent a copy of this book by the author, and we'll be publishing a spoiler-free review very soon, so definitely keep your eyes open for that. I loved Ace of Shades so much. It was such a fun, exhilarating read, and it was just exactly what I needed at the moment. It is filled with the most creative magic, intense crime, and even a little bit of sort of mob casino political intrigue. The magic system of this book is really, really fantastic. There are definitely a few holes that could be filled a little bit more cleanly, but the way that everything is set up with all of these different families that represent different forms of magic is just so interesting to me. The characters are just unbelievably lovable. Like, I just finished Ace of Shades. It does not come out for another week or so, and I'm desperately dying for book 2 because I need to continue on with this story. As a note, this book does follow a Black bisexual main character and a gender fluid parental figure, which is so awesome in my opinion. I was so happy to see that. The world of this sort of like alternative fantasy Las Vegas is so interesting. There are just so many shenanigans and interesting different events throughout this story. The mystery plot line is really well done, and I'm so obsessed with Ace of Shades. I think everyone needs to read it. Please keep an eye out for that spoiler-free review. I am so excited to post it, and I really hope more of you guys pick up Ace of Shades because it was so much fun, and I think it definitely deserves more hype. The next book that I read in the month of March is another audiobook I listened to, and that was Mistress by Audrey Coulter. This is technically the prequel to one of my favorite reads of 2017, which was A Fire and Stars, but the stories are totally independent from one another. You don't have to read one to read the other. I personally gave Mistress 3 out of 5 stars. While I think it's a great book, I just unfortunately did not enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I love Audrey Coulter's writing style. Her prose is really beautiful. I can tell that there have even been improvements to world building since her first novel. Like, the construction of the world and the magic system was really interesting and very well developed. I loved the characters too. It is a very diverse cast, as we have bisexual main characters and we have main characters of color. We have a disabled main character. Very diverse, but they're all just, again, really well-rounded and very well created. Even the antagonists I really, really like just because they're great villains. I think with this story, I've only just discovered now, is the plot of it sort of fell flat for me. I was really excited for the story about a demigod whose lover is hellbent on getting revenge from the king, when in actuality it is the main character who has created all of this pain and suffering for her lover, and it's supposed to be this like great, amazing chase, and I just didn't feel that. The whole construction of the story is really well done. I just think the events of the story and the plot just wasn't my cup of tea. It just wasn't the excitement that I was looking for in this story. It wasn't as intense as I really wanted. There's so many perks about this book. It just wasn't my favorite book that I've ever read. Also, although this is a prequel to A Fire and Stars, I don't see any connection between the two stories whatsoever. Like, yes, different characters, different time periods, all like check marks for writing a prequel. But even the magic system just does not seem the same. I can't make any connections between the two worlds, which was kind of strange for me. So I think even if there was just a little bit more of like a homage to A Fire and Stars, I might have enjoyed it more, but it felt really separated and disconnected from the original story that I loved, which was also a little disappointing. But I would definitely still recommend Mistress if you're someone who does love high fantasy stories. It really is an all-around good book, and I just wish I enjoyed it more. The next book that I read this month is another ebook that I got from my local library, and that is Words on Bathroom Walls by Julia Walton. This book completely took me by surprise. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Words on Bathroom Walls somehow strikes the perfect balance between humor and suffering when telling a story about mental illness, and just everything about it was so good. I did struggle with the format of this story just a little bit in the beginning because they are told through journal entries from our main main character named Adam directed at his therapist. And while there are so many YA books out there that are told through like journal or diary format, they're normally directed at just a reader in general, anyone who could be reading the story or the diary itself, whereas like there are like directive comments and sentences that are intended for one specific person to read. So we sort of have to like assume the role of the therapist in this story, which was very different and strange for me to read for the first time, but like I got used to it near the end because Adam has such a unique, distinctive voice, and it was really great to read his narration. This story takes place at a really interesting point in Adam's treatment, in my opinion, because he is able to identify between what is a hallucination and what is not. So the entirety of the story is told from this perspective of, I understand that what is in front of me is not real, it's a hallucination and nobody else can see it, but that does not change the fact that I can see it and it's really disruptive to me. There's a lot of accurate information about the illness in general, and it goes into a lot of debunking stereotypes and stigmatization of schizophrenia, which I really loved. And I also really loved the main relationship in this story. I feel like Words on Bathroom Walls is a great example of how to write away a story that deals with mental illness while also having a relationship between someone who's mentally ill and someone who's not, and having that relationship be really healthy and well balanced. It is not a love cure book, and avoiding that trope in mental illness fiction is really important to me. There is actually a passage in the beginning of this story where Adam says that Maya is the cure because his symptoms are less severe around her, but like I think the author specifically uses the words the cure to sort of play on that trope and be like, this is not how it really works, because the entirety of the story goes to show that one person is not the cure and mental illness is very serious and it requires actual treatment. The relationship between Maya and Adam is really normal in my opinion. It was so reminiscent of my own relationship in high school. It felt very realistic. They're just so supportive and encouraging towards each other. They always want to make the other person happy, and it was so wonderful to read. Like, I loved the main relationship of this story so much. Words on Bathroom Walls for me was just all around a really great read. I had the best time reading it. It took me totally by surprise because I did not expect to love it this much. But if you love all of the mental health books that I talk about on my channel, I would definitely recommend putting this one on your TBR. And the final book that I read in the month of March is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, which is book 1 in the Infernal Devices trilogy, and this again is a part of the Shadowhunter Chronicles read-along. I'm pretty sure this is my 3rd or 4th time reading the Infernal Devices series, but this is actually the first time that I am reading the full Shadowhunter Chronicles in publication order, and I'm really enjoying this method. In the past, when I've reread the full Shadowhunter Chronicles, I read like full series at a time, and I feel like I'm so much more appreciative of things that are coming up in Clockwork Angel because like I haven't gotten there yet. Like, it's so easy for me to pull from future events, but here I'm really focusing on the present and what's happening now in the story and all of the connections that are like subtly lined, and I'm really loving it. Personally, Clockwork Angel is not my favorite book that Cassandra Clare has ever written. It always takes me quite a while to jump into, and that happened again. It took me like 100, 200 pages to like be really invested in this story. But like once I get there, like I'm loving it. Like I think I loved Clockwork Angel the most that I ever have. I feel like this book is at its strongest when the characters are really solidified in the roles that they're going to play for the rest of the series. It's kind of similar to my experience reading City of Glass. Like once I get halfway through this book, I just cannot stop reading. I think I read like the last 250 pages of this book in one sitting because I was so in love with it. So I really loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, of course, and just as soon as I got past that like beginning stage where everything is really like slowly building up, it was just like a race car. I just could not stop reading, and I had the best time. And so my next feat in the Shadowhunter read-along will be City of Ashes, so I'm very excited to jump between the two for the very first time, but nonetheless was a great read. The Clockwork Angel live show will be coming soon as well, so stay up to date on Twitter or the Drug Society Facebook page for that announcement. But I'm so happy to be rereading The Infernal Devices, and I can't wait to dive into book 2. Alrighty, well that concludes my March reading wrap up. I feel like this month I have had like the most balanced that I ever had when it comes to books that I really loved and books that I didn't. Personally, it's just really not typical for me to rate almost half of the books that I read in my month under 4 stars, but you know, everything is a new experience, and I feel like me not loving so many books that I'm reading lately is allowing me to pick up on different criticisms and just hone my critical reading skills, which has still been a beneficial experience. Definitely let me know in the comments below what has been your favorite read in the month of March, because I would love to know. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!